¿Ya se encuentra listo?
Hi, we are ready. We are about to start. Today, ready?
Okay.
Bueno, pues buenos días a todas y todos. Bienvenidos a este tercer día de actividades del primer Congreso Nacional sobre Marsupiales Americanos. Y como primera actividad del día de hoy tenemos la conferencia magistral a cargo del doctor Antonio Bezerra Dos Santos, titulada Los marsupiales en investigación con enfoque Una Salud. Si es tan amable de comenzar, doctor, por favor.
So, can you confirm that you can hear me? Okay. So, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Unfortunately, I cannot speak Spanish. I'd like to give this talk in your mother language. But I'm from Brazil. I speak Portuguese. I can understand a bit of Spanish, but to communicate, it would be better if I do this presentation in English. So first of all, I'd like to thank you for the invitation to talk about this topic in this Congress. I'm Marcos Bezerra Santos. I'm from Brazil. And nowadays, I work in Italy at the Department of Veterinary Medicine of the University of Bari, mostly with vectors and vector-borne diseases of zoonotic concern. I had the experience to work with the Delphis opossums during my master's degree that I did in southeastern Brazil. And during this master's degree, I had the opportunity to study several zoonotic parasites that can be shared between these animals, humans, and also domestic animals such as dogs, cats, and horses. So first of all, I'd like to give a little bit of introduction about these animal species. Actually, the species of the genus Delphis, as many you have already know during the other talks in this conference, they are restricted, occurring in America, in the American continent. That's why they are also known as New World marsupials. Nowadays, there are 60 species, which are the Delphis albiventris, the Delphis aurita, the Delphis marsupialis, the Delphis virginiana, the Delphis imperfecta, and the Delphis spernigra, that they are distributed throughout the American continent, from Canada to the extreme limits of South America. Their occurrence is according to the species. For instance, in North America and in parts of Central America, we have the occurrence of the Delphis virginiana, while in the other parts of Latin America, we have the other species, such as the Delphis albiventris that occur more in this area of the central part of Latin America. We have the Delphis marsupialis that occurs in the Amazon basin, in Brazil and other countries of that covers the Amazon basin. And the Delphis aurita that occurs more here in this coast part of the Latin America. So why those species are important? Why species of the genus the Delphis are important from one health point of view? They are known as synanthropic animals, and this is why, because they are commonly observed in urban and peri-urban areas of the areas where they occur, since they are well adapted to live in human dealings. They have an opportunistic diet, so it's very common to observe them to feeding on rubbish from food from the streets, always in urban areas. Also in rural areas where there are farms with farm animals and where there are plenty of food available, these animals are quite common. However, their natural habitat is the forest. They should be in the forest. And the presence of these opossums close to human dwellings has some consequences. There are the consequence that is the topic of this talk, which is the transmission of diseases, of zoonotic pathogens to humans, also to other pathogens of veterinary importance to domestic animals. But also we have the direct consequences in the animal species. For instance, it's commonly observed opossums being attacked by domestic animals such as dogs, and this occur more with female opossums that are carrying their babies on the pouch or on their back because they get slower, so it's difficult for them to run from these animal attacks. Also, they are subject to roadkills. I mean, car accidents is very common, and it is quite observed in areas where this occurs, and they might also be killed by people, since many people consider them as pests or confuse that they seem like a rodent, or say that they are dirty. So sometimes people directly kill them using poison or other methods to kill these animals. In these pictures here is a picture that I did, are pictures that I did during my master's degree in Brazil, where we collected some opossums to check the occurrence of zoonotic pathogens or ectoparasites on these animals. Here in A, we have, for instance, a female that was killed by a car, and when we opened the pouch, we observed that it was full of babies. Unfortunately, those babies were still alive but could not be saved because they strictly depend on their mother at the beginning of the years, since they are marsupials. Of the days, since they are marsupials, they need these nutrients for their mother, so it's almost impossible to recover them at this stage. Here we have an opossum that was captured to do sampling. Here in this situation here, it was a female opossum that was attacked by a dog, and this female was also with their babies on the pouch, as can be observed here. Sometimes when these females are attacked, the dogs kill the female, and the babies still survive. So sometimes they are rescued by people that bring them to their home, and there is always this risk of transmission of disease. So the best situation to do in these cases, for instance, I can give the example from Brazil, is to call the environmental police to transport these animals, these baby animals, to recovery center where they will be properly manipulated with all the safety measures to avoid the transmission, the possible transmission of zoonotic pathogens. So saying that, we also know that opossums should not be considered as human enemies. Those animals are very important in nature, since they have an irreplaceable ecological role, such as in the control of pests, since in their diet, many insects, venomous animals such as spiders, some venomous snakes are part of their diet. So these animals help in the control of these pests. Also, they contribute in the dispersion of seeds, and there are studies where these animals are considered good contributors in the recovery of areas of forested areas that are degraded, because they can walk through long distances, and the seeds that are present on their feces can be finished as trees in other places, so it will help in the process of reforestation. However, they are reservoirs of infectious diseases. I will give some examples in the next slides of some of the diseases that they can transmit to humans, not only to humans, but also to domestic animals, such as dogs and cats, which lives in close contact with humans. So therefore, it might indirectly also contribute to the transmission of disease to people. And as I said, it's really important to know that these animals are really important in nature for the diverse reasons I gave before. But humans should be aware that the prevention of infectious agents transmitted by opossums should be a topic that should be discussed, and people, the normal people, people population that are not involved in science, should also be aware of those risks and not bring these animals to their homes, or to avoid the situations where these animals will be attracted to their homes. So, first of all, now I will enter in the part of the pathogens. It will be mostly on parasites. I didn't tell previously, but I'm a parasitologist. So, the topic that I'm going to discuss now will be more related to parasites of zoonotic concern. And these parasites will involve ectoparasites such as ticks, fleas, sandflies, triatomines, and also endoparasites, protozoa that are transmitted by arthropods, gastrointestinal parasites, since it's known that opossums can share many species of zoonotic parasites. They can harbor it and might contribute to the transmission in the human environment. So, first of all, we'll talk about ticks and tick-borne pathogens. Ticks are among the major vector of pathogens. They are second to mosquitoes. There are several pathogens that cause severe disease in humans. One example is the Rickettsia rickettsii, which is the agent of the Rocky Mountain spotted fever in North America, and also of the Brazilian spotted fever in South America. These vectors, they feed on several vertebrate hosts, including human, domestic animals, and wildlife. And due to this characteristic, since they feed on several hosts, depending on the characteristic of the tick species, for instance, some species are tick generalists, which means that they can feed on a human, that they can feed on a dog, on a cat, on an opossum, on other wildlife species. Due to these characteristics, when these species are generalists, and I can give also an example, which is several species of amblyomma, which are vectors of the pathogen that I told, Rickettsia rickettsii, they can be exchanged among these hosts, which means if we have a wildlife species such as an opossums that circulates freely among the forested areas, among the urban and the peri-urban environments, they might be carriers of those ticks to the urban environment, which can be transmitted to dog, can be transmitted to people. And these ticks might be carrying these pathogens and may cause a risk in the transmission of these pathogens to humans. Therefore, opossums have a major role in the epidemiology of tick-borne pathogens, in the epidemiological chains of these pathogens, due to their movement among these forests, these urban and these rural locations, since they might be spreading these ticks from the wild, from the urban environments. And there are several studies where we observed, for instance, studies also I did during my master's degree, where in Brazil we found opossums infected by not one, but more several tick species, and some of those ticks such as the Amblyomma sculptum, vector of Rickettsia rickettsii, were also present in these animals. And we know that this Amblyomma sculptum is a generalist tick. It may feed on opossums, and if an opossum is a reservoir of pathogens such as Rickettsia rickettsii, these ticks might be transmitting these pathogens to the urban environment. So among the tick species that have been reported in opossums up to date, I think up to 2021, in fact, it was reviewed with some collaborators, and we had species, these species in Latin America, several species of Amblyomma, several species of Ixodes species. In the case of Ixodes, we found several ticks that are more specific to opossums. So the rule of this tick species as a vector is not well studied, so we don't know if they might be transmitting diseases since they are very specific to opossum and there is no record in other hosts other than rodents, which in which they feed as immature stages. It's not well known the rule in their rule in the transmission of this disease. We have also species of Hemaphysalis. To date, we have only one species in Latin America, opossums, which is Hemaphysalis juxtacocci. Species of them are centaur and also Rhipicephalus sanguineus sensulato, which is a species that is considered very specific of dogs. It has dogs as primary host, but has also been recorded in opossums as accidental parasitism. So for the species Amblyomma, I would say that in Latin America, it might be considered one of the most important species since it is the main vectors. Species of this genus are among the main vectors of Rickettsia species. And they are found in opossums in the stage of larvae and nymphs. And what the situation might make us think. There are some experimental studies in which opossums have been infected, opossums have been able to transmit the infection of Rickettsia rickettsii to ticks, or Amblyomma sculptum ticks. And this means that if opossums are reservoir of Rickettsia species and those ticks that feeds most on the immature stages as larvae or as nymphs may get the infection, we also know that those ticks are tree-host ticks, so they will eventually leave this opossum. So if they get the infection from the opossum, as an adult stage, they might feed on a dog, they might feed on a human, and might participate here in the transmission of Rickettsia rickettsii to humans. Another tick species is in Latin America that occurs in opossum is the ones of the genus Ixodes. However, as I told, these species are very specific of opossums. They are found more frequently as adult stages in opossum. They are considered tree-host ticks also, and the immature stages, the larvae, the nymphs, they feed on rodents at the early stages. However, the opossums are the primary hosts. There are a report in which Rickettsia belli was found in Ixodes, was detected in Ixodes loricatus. It might say that opossums might be reservoir of these species and might help to maintain their circulation. However, the rule of Ixodes loricatus as a possible vector is not recorded. The species Hemaphysalis juxtacocci is a species that is commonly found in several wild and domestic hosts and includes also records on humans. They have been recorded, this species has been recorded in the Delphis aurita and in the Delphis marsupialis. However, also the rule of this tick species in the cycle, in the Delphis aurita, the Delphis species, in the cycle of diseases transmitted by ticks is not so clear. So those are only reported. However, indicates how important it is to study and how important further studies on these animal species are to better understand the epidemiology of these diseases. In the case of the Delphis virginiana, as we saw at the beginning in that distribution map, we saw that this species is more restricted to North America and Central America. And due to this distinct geographical range, the tick species that are reported on this opossum species are different, are those that occur on domestic animals, on wildlife, and also in humans in North and Central America. Among those species, we have Dermacentor variabilis, Ambioma americanum, which are very important vectors of pathogens in that region. Also, we have records of Hemaphysalis longicornis, which is an exotic species in America. However, they are very important vector of pathogens, and also they cause problem in their hosts, such as in dogs, even in humans, which is known as the tick paralysis, since the toxin of their saliva may cause paralysis on the host. And also, we have several species of ixodes that occur in that region reported in the Delphis virginiana. Among the pathogens that might be transmitted by those ticks, we have important pathogens such as Ehrlichia japensis, Ehrlichia wingi, Rickettsia rickettsii, and here we can talk about the Rock Mountain spotted fever, Francisella tularensis, Borrelia burgdorferi sensulato, which is the causative agent of the Lyme disease, and also other species of Rickettsia such as Rickettsia parkeri. And lastly, about the tick species, we have Rhipicephalus sanguineus. As I told, this is a species that is more commonly found in dogs. It has dogs as primary hosts, has been rarely reported in opossums. There are only two records, one in the Delphis virginiana and the other in the Delphis marsupialis. However, the sharing of pathogens have not been assessed and seem unlikely, also due to the specificity of Rhipicephalus sanguineus to dogs. Another important pathogen that might transmit a ectoparasite that might transmit pathogens among people and that is commonly found in opossums are the fleas. And there is a great diversity of flea species that infest opossums. Among the species recorded, we have the species that are known to be vectors of pathogens, and those species that are known to be vector of pathogens has been found with considerable prevalence in opossums from America, but they are also ectoparasites of domestic animals and has been recorded also infesting humans. Among the examples, we have the flea Tenocephalidis felis, which is a flea species that is very common in dogs and cats, but can also disturb humans. We have also Xenopsila chaopis, which is known as the rat flea. This flea is particularly important in the transmission of bacterium that we'll talk about it later on. Pulex irritans that commonly also infest humans, and also Pulex stimulants. And also we have other species that the vector rule are unknown and they are more associated with wildlife, and maybe due to this situation being more associated to wildlife, the vector rule of them has been understudied, such as Adoratopsila antiquorum, Pilogenes occidentalis, and Sediopsila simplex. Among others, there is a large list of these species that have been recorded on these animals. So the first part, I will talk about three pathogens that might be transmitted by fleas and that are of really public health important and must be seen as one health problem from a one health perspective, also being associated with opossums. So the first one is Rickettsia typhi, which is the causative agent of the murine typhus. The vector is the Xenopsila chaopis, which is the rat fleas. This flea is more associated with rodents, but has also been recorded in opossums, mainly in the Delphis virginiana opossums, but also in South America in the Delphis arita opossums. And this bacteria species, this Rickettsia, has also been recorded in opossums from the USA. Another rickettsia is the Rickettsia felis, which causes the flea-borne spotted fever or the Rickettsiosis felis. The main vector is the Ctenocephalidis felis, which is a flea that is commonly found in dogs and cats that might also cause infestation in humans, and that also has been commonly found in the Delphis opossums. In this opossums, for instance, since these fleas has been are commonly found in opossums, and there has also been studies on the exposition of these opossums to the Rickettsia felis, there is a risk. Of course, I would say it's an unknown risk that opossums might participate in the transmission cycle of Rickettsia felis. And a seroprevalence of 22% has been found in the Delphis virginiana, and also it has been detected molecularly in several tissues of opossums in other parts of America. Another pathogen is the Yersinia pestis. This pathogen is historically known since it's the pathogens responsible for the Great Plague in Europe. It is also transmitted by the rat flea, the Xenopsila chaopis. It has been found in the Delphis albiventris through serology and also through the culture. And due to the occurrence of Xenopsila chaopis in the Delphis species, such as the Delphis aurita and the Delphis virginiana, we might also consider that might be a risk of the involvement of opossums in the possible transmission of Yersinia pestis to people. So, leaving fleas and coming to sandflies, which are other ectoparasites. Sandflies are insects that are mostly important due to their role as vectors of leishmaniasis. And we all know that leishmania is an important protozoan that causes diseases in humans and domestic animals in several areas of America. We have several endemic areas in Latin America caused, and among the leishmania species, among the several leishmania species that we have present in South America, the most important one, I would say, is the Leishmania infantum, which is the causative agent of visceral leishmaniasis. And there are several studies on the participation of opossums in the diverse cycles of leishmania species. Since for leishmania, we have sylvatic cycles, which mean that this protozoa might be maintained in nature through the diverse wildlife reservoirs, which might include the opossums, but also the peridomestic cycles, in which involves the domestic animals, such as dogs, which are important domestic hosts, and also a parasite that causes important disease in humans. So, opossums are considered blood source for several sandfly species. There are studies where it was detected the blood of opossums in these insects, and also the presence of the protozoa in these insects, and also on several species of opossums occurring in America. For instance, we have the example of a study that detected a high prevalence of Leishmania infantum. Just as a reminder, I told Leishmania infantum is considered the main species, the most important species causative of the leishmaniasis in humans. And there is a high prevalence recorded in the Delphis albiventris and in the Delphis aurita opossums. This prevalence is so high, being up to 91.96% of the opossums detected in the bone marrow of these animals. And this support the hypothesis that opossums are important reservoirs. They can maintain the protozoa in nature. I mean, they cannot develop the disease, but the disease can pass to dogs, can pass to humans through the feeding of phlebotomine sandflies on opossums that might be present there close to human environments, in the peridomestic environment. And then when this sandfly go and feed on a dog or go and feed on a human, might transmit the parasite, and then this host will develop the disease. In areas with peridomestic transmissions, as I told, sandflies may feed on these opossums, and in these other susceptible hosts, such as humans, dogs, and cats. and it implies that opossums may be a link in the transmission in rural and in urban environments of endemic areas. And this has been supported by the example in a study that was performed in Brazil in 1996 in the northeast area of Brazil, the northeast region, in an endemic area, where it was recorded that the months with the higher opossum population was linked also with the peak of Lutzomyia longipalpis, which is among the main vectors of Leishmania infantum in South America, in Latin America, I would say. And also with the cases of visceral leishmaniasis, with the increase of cases of visceral leishmaniasis in humans of that areas. In addition, the Delphis albiventris, which is a species commonly present in South America, has been proved to infect Lutzomyia longipalpis with Leishmania infantum, also supporting that these opossums might be these reservoirs, might have the protozoa, might carry the protozoa and infect these insects that will, in the sequence, transmit the protozoa to other hosts. In this study, Lutzomyia, 14% of the sandflies that feed on the infected opossums were positive to the xenodiagnosis, so proving that opossums are able to infect these insects with the protozoa. In addition, the opossums has also been considered highly attractive to sandflies. I mean, sandflies like to feed on these animal species. They attract those sandflies, but sandflies also like to feed on other animal species, such as the dog, which is also an important host for Leishmania, an important source of blood source for sandflies, and also humans. Since the blood of humans and opossums has also been detected in Lutzomyia longipalpis that were collected in these peridomestic areas. And all of these data support the rule of marsupials of the genus Delphis in the life cycle of Leishmania in endemic areas. Here in the picture, you can observe that we have the sylvatic cycle, which is the maintenance of the parasite only in the forest. But when we are close with the peridomestic and domestic environments, such as farms and also the urban environments, where these animals, these opossums, have access and circulate freely, might have also the circulation of the sandflies and also of the Leishmania protozoa, bringing the risk of transmission of the parasite among all of those diverse hosts. So another important protozoa that is endemic in several areas of America is the Trypanosoma cruzi. This protozoa species is transmitted by triatomine sandflies, but they might also be transmitted to other forms such as the oral transmission. They are the etiological agent of the Chagas disease, which is an important disease that is associated with poor housing conditions in developing countries, and is considered a neglected tropical disease. So as I told, the transmission could occur through the fecal matters of insect vectors, but it has been considered that one important form of transmission is also the consumption of contaminated food. And this food is contaminated through when infected insects, infected triatomite, are triturated with some fruits, such as the acai palm fruit, with the sugar cane, also with mango. And this protozoa might survive on this food and might be transmitted to the host, such as human that will consume this food and cause the disease in human. And we will see in the next slide that opossums might have an important role because due to the presence of these trypanosomes, of Trypanosoma cruzi, in their anal glands. So the secretions of opossums might carry also these trypanosomes and might contaminate the environment, might contaminate food, might be ingested by dogs or even accidentally by humans, and then cause the disease, the Chagas disease, in this in human host. Another form of transmission is through the ingestion of raw meat of infected animals, and also you see that in some regions, opossums are also considered a food source, not only as food source, but in some areas of South America, they are considered also as medicine. So there is a direct manipulation of humans with these opossums, with these opossums. And another form of transmission is through the breastfeeding to the mother to their child. So opossums, as I told, have an important role in the zoonotic life cycle of Trypanosoma cruzi, since they are a good food source also for these triatomines bugs that feed on opossums and might transmit the pathogens to opossum, but not only when the triatomine feed on these opossums, but also when the opossum might feed on the infected triatomine. As I told at the beginning, insects are part of the diet of these the Delphis species. And since they eat those insects and the oral transmission might be a form of transmission for Trypanosoma cruzi, the opossums might be highly positive to Trypanosoma cruzi, such as it has been recorded in some areas, such as in Panama. A recent study has detected a prevalence of 54.39% in domestic and in forested and peri-domestic areas of that region. As can be observed here in the figure, it has been recorded also co-infection with other trypanosomas, such as Trypanosoma rangeli, but the pathogenic rule of this trypanosoma is not considered important. But here we can see Trypanosoma cruzi that has been detected with an overall prevalence of 54.39% in forested areas and in the peri-domicile. So means that opossums might be an important carrier of Trypanosoma species, and their secretions might be a form of oral transmission, since when they go to the cities, they might be contaminating this environment, this food, and bringing the risk of transmission of the protozoa to the domestic environment. It has been also recorded in USA through the blood meal analysis of triatomines collected in a dog shelter from USA. It was recorded the presence of dog, opossum, and human blood on these triatomines, meaning that they feed, these triatomines feed on several hosts, domestic and wild hosts, and might have this cross-sharing of this protozoa among these hosts. And as I told, the characteristic that opossums have to circulate among different geographical sites is an important factor in the epidemiology of all of these diseases in the areas where these animals are endemic. So the importance I told about the secretions present in the anal glands of opossums is due to the high prevalence of Trypanosoma cruzi that is found in the secretions of opossums. These secretions in anal glands are considered an optimal microenvironment for the development of infective stages, the metacyclic stages of Trypanosoma cruzi. So it has been suggested as an oral transmission route. Since these infective forms might be released in the environment with the secretion of opossums and might contaminate food such as vegetables, water, or even being ingested by the susceptible host. So we can observe that for these parasites, there are some studies that support that opossums might be important reservoirs, since that they might not develop the disease. There is not record of opossums presenting clinical signs developing the Chagas disease, the symptoms of Chagas disease, but can transmit to the susceptible hosts. And here we will say many humans that are the species most affected by Trypanosoma cruzi, and this has been a problem in South America before due to the living conditions and the presence of triatomines. But now we have also the oral route of infection as an important source of transmission of Trypanosoma cruzi. The Trypanosoma cruzi that are present in the infective forms that are present in the anal glands of these opossums has been studied, and the oral infection of mice with this form has been also performed, and these mice get infected with these forms that were recovered from the anal glands of the Delphis species, also supporting the involvement of the Delphis species in areas where there were Chagas disease outbreak, but the vector was not detected. So most probably the source of infection in that area where the outbreak, in that areas where the outbreaks occurred, was the oral transmission uh, through the ingestion of contaminated food, and it is unclear if the opossums might have a role, since those foods might be contaminated also to the vector. But since the vector was not found, most probably we have this hypothesis that opossums might be involved in those outbreaks also. And another factor, as I told, is the ingestion of opossums meat by humans, which may also be a risk of Trypanosoma cruzi, since the parasite has also been found in muscle tissue of opossums, being also a possible risk of transmission to humans consuming, ingesting the meat of opossums. So we talk about all the parasites that might be transmitted to in the indirect way in the case of the arthropod-borne transmitted parasites. Now we'll focus more on the endoparasites, and here we'll focus on the gastrointestinal parasites. Opossums are species that diverse, great diversity of parasites, many of them being of zoonotic concern, and also the prevalence of these parasites in opossums is very high, as recorded in some studies reported throughout the American continent. So the endoparasites associated with opossums are the helminths. We have many zoonotic helminths that are associated with opossums that have been recorded. However, for all of those studies, the real role of opossums in the transmission cycles has been hypothesized, but no study in which it proves that they are directly related with this transmission are available. Some of these parasites that are zoonotic may be an accidental parasitism, such as it was considered for Toxocara cati that was detected in Delphis albiventris, and some other parasites are recorded with a high prevalence. For example, we performed a study in southeastern Brazil where we found a high prevalence of Ancylostoma caninum in the Delphis aurita. The prevalence was up to 65.3%, and we know that both of these parasites, Toxocara cati is causes the visceral larva migrans, but Ancylostoma caninum causes also cutaneous larva migrans in humans, is also an important species to dogs, since it is commonly found in dogs from South America. There are diverse studies, I would say also worldwide, site species distributed worldwide. So there might be this cost sharing or of these parasites among opossums, dogs, and then enter also humans in this epidemiological cycle. So among the zoonotic helminths harbored by opossums, we have some important ones such as Trichinella spiralis, Angiostrongylus cantonensis, Angiostrongylus costarricensis, Ancylostoma caninum, which are nematodes that have major public health concern. And also we have some trematodes such as Paragonimus species, Alaria marciana species, echinostoma species that all of them are zoonotics. Some of them are cause more severe diseases, others cause less severe diseases, but humans are prone to get infection by these parasites. And since they occur also in opossums, and there is a direct transmission from the environment to the host, these parasites might circulate among those diverse hosts. So, just quick, briefly, I would talk about Trichinella spiralis, give about each one of them. For Trichinella spiralis is a zoonotic nematode that previously was mostly associated with domestic pigs, but nowadays with the biosecurity safety, the major risks are among the wild reservoirs. There is a risk to the consumption of the meat of these animals. And we know that opossums, there are some regions that are hunted through the non-legalized game hunting. So there is the risk of transmission of these parasites. However, as I told at the beginning, all of this is not clear. We have the record of the zoonotic parasites on the opossums, but their real rule on the epidemiology of this disease is still not clear to us. We have also Angiostrongylus cantonensis, Angiostrongylus costarricensis, which are mostly associated with rats as definitive hosts. There are some intermediate hosts, such as snails and slugs, parathenic hosts, and it has been detected causing disease in the Delphis virginiana, such as neurological diseases. So it is a parasite that might also be a problem for the health of the wildlife animals, being also a zoonotic parasite. As I told, Ancylostoma caninum has been recorded with high prevalence, and the presence of Ancylostoma caninum in opossums that goes from the urban environments to the urban environments, the presence of opossums exploring the parks, public parks, the rubbish, where also dogs has access, might be a factor that contributes to the sharing of these pathogens among those two hosts, and also humans might get infected through the skin penetration of larvae that are present in the environment. Some zoonotic trematodes, we have the species of Paragonimus, which is a zoonotic species that has been associated with opossums that are considered one definitive host for this species. Also, zoonotic trematodes, we have some malaria species, which infect canids, felids, mustelids as definitive hosts, as snail and amphibians as intermediate hosts, and opossums have been considered parathenic hosts. So there are also the risk of transmission via the consumption of the meat of opossums. Regarding the protozoa, we have an important protozoa, which is Toxoplasma gondii, which is a parasite that infects a wild number of hosts, domestic and wild hosts. It is a problem for pregnant females, which may cause abortion, also in farm animals. And then, since we have records of the seroprevalence of the Delphis species, with prevalence of up to 37.3% of this protozoa, it might be a risk of infection when humans also might consume the meat of these opossums, might be getting the cyst of this protozoa and might develop the infection. Other species of gastrointestinal parasites, we have Cryptosporidium and Giardia species, which might be spread via the contaminated feces of opossums in food and water. Most of the species, the studies that detected these parasites in opossums detected only at the genus level, so the zoonotic potential of them are not clear. And again, I will emphasize that it's important to study more deep those parasites so that if really they are zoonotic, and if opossums are having a role in the transmission of in the contamination of the environment through the feces with the zoonotic parasites. And there is only one study in which the experimental infection with the Cryptosporidium parvum, which is a zoonotic species in Delphis virginiana, was able to cause disease, to cause clinical signs in nursing opossums. So the parasite was able to thrive on those opossums. So again, I would say more studies are important to see really what are the which are the species of those parasites that are present on these animals. So to domestic animals, apart from the zoonotic part, which is really important and is the main topic of this talk from the One Health perspective, we also have the interaction of opossums with the domestic animals. And this interaction might be direct or indirect, indirect to the presence of the ectoparasites or to the consumption of contaminated food, but also with the direct through the dog attacks that I don't know, feral animals that might also consume or ingest the secretion of these animals and then get the infection with diseases. Such as example, again, I bring the example of the Ancylostomum caninum that has been found with high prevalence in opossums in the Delphis aurita from southeast Brazil, and also the Sarcoidosis neurona, which is a problem in horses. And the main host, the definitive host, is the Delphis virginiana. Is proved to be the Delphis virginiana. So in the case of the Ancylostomum caninum, as I told, the presence of opossums in the cities might be a factor that contribute to the sharing of this parasite, of this zoonotic parasite, which is a nematode between dogs and opossums, and humans might be entering in the cycle to the penetration of larvae from the environment in the skin. In the case of Sarcoidosis neurona, is a problem in horses. It causes neurological and fatal disease in those horses. Horses are considered accidental hosts, but we have here the Virginian opossum, which is proved to be the definitive host where the sexual reproduction of the protozoa occurs. We have also the presence of some intermediate hosts in the life cycle. So all of those individuals have the importance in the transmission of disease, and the presence of opossums in farms might be really a problem in horse farms where the horses might acquire the disease, which is usually fatal. So to conclude my talk, first I would like to say that we should not see opossum as a human enemy, since, as I told at the beginning, they have a really important ecological role in nature. They are essential for the equilibrium of ecosystems where they are included. However, we should be aware that the anthropogenic activities, such as invasion of the natural habitats of these animals, which the natural habitats are the forests, so the invasion of this natural deforestation process brings the negative consequences not only for opossums, but also for other wildlife species, and consequently bringing also problems to human and domestic animal health. And these problems is due to the transmission of those zoonotic pathogens. Opossums are the important examples which interact with humans and domestic animals through the direct contact, with humans through hunting, manipulation, and consumption of their meat, and also through the illegal trade in local markets, and due to the indirect contact through the ectoparasites, the contaminated food with their feces or with their secretion, and also other, which will contribute to the transmission of these zoonotic pathogens to people and to domestic animals. So all of this brings One Health risk, brings risk from this One Health perspective, since some pathogens are able to cause disease in one species. For instance, I bring again the example of Rickettsia rickettsii, which is a pathogen, a bacterium that causes usually fatal disease in humans. But in opossums, this pathogen doesn't cause disease in opossums, and then opossums are considered reservoirs. So they might be healthy there, but sometimes they are carrying these pathogens, and with the presence of thick species that might be vector, these pathogens may circulate among these hosts, such as the opossums that might have the bacterium but not develop the disease, and humans that, if get the bacteria, might develop the disease, which will be in many cases a fatal disease. I also would like to emphasize that it is still scant, the data on the infectious agents associated with opossums. It is not only parasites, they are focused on parasites, but there are many other examples of studies in which found other bacteria, in which it was found a virus that causes human diseases. So it's important to further explore the research on these animals and above all, educate the population about the risks of the direct and indirect contact with these animals. In the sense that in areas with these animals are very common in the cities, if they found them in their street, let them go, or if they found them in their houses, call the professionals to collect them and to release them in the proper area with the proper manipulation of those animals. So saying that, I would like to thank you all for listening to this talk. Also the organization of the event for the invite. I would like to invite you all also to follow the Instagram page of the lab where I work right now in Italy, in which we share a lot of papers of our field activities on the research of vectors and vector-borne pathogens of zoonotic concern. I brought a picture here of my research group currently that is composed of professors with the leadership of Professor Domenico Otranto and also the presence of associate and postdoc fellows. And I'm open to questions now, or if you want to contact me later, I leave here my email if you have any further questions that you cannot tell me now. So thank you very much.
I'm sorry, Dr. Marco, but I forgot to read your presentation. So, before questions, el doctor Marcos Becerra Dos Santos es médico veterinario por la Universidad Federal Rural de Pernambucano, en Brasil. Tiene una maestría en medicina veterinaria por la Universidad Federal de Vicosa, también en Brasil. Y el doctorado en salud animal y zoonosis por la Universidad de Bari, en Italia. Como ya vimos, sus principales intereses de investigación son los vectores y los patógenos transmitidos por vectores de interés veterinario y de salud pública. So, we have time for questions. Any questions?
Buenos días, Marcos. Te habla Hugo Ruiz.
Buenos días.
Buenos días. Muchísimas gracias por tu presentación. Creo que dentro de los investigadores que están enfocados al enfoque de una salud en Delfis, eres de los más, digamos, representativos, ¿no? Y es por eso que me permití y afortunadamente aceptaste compartir con nosotros este trabajo. En este congreso estamos buscando mirar hacia ese enfoque. Estamos convencidos que es la mejor manera para continuar con la investigación, aprovechar todo lo que se sabe de los marsupiales y de los vivientes y caminar hacia esa meta, ¿no? de construcción de un conocimiento basado en el enfoque de una salud. ¿Qué nos puedes comentar tú con relación a este enfoque y los beneficios a corto y mediano plazo que tú tienes conocimiento que se han obtenido en este contexto, ¿no?, de investigación, una salud y derechos hasta la fecha? Sí, entendiste la pregunta.
Sorry, no, I understand up to some point, but
Va en English, pero okay. in the context of the One Health research on the derbies, do you have any information about the impacts, about the what so far, what is the contribution of this focus on the context about the results on the investigation of the derbies?
Okay, the investigation of pathogens on the Delphis in One Health perspective, right?
Right.
Okay, yeah, of course. I mean, as I told, it's really important to monitor the presence of those pathogens, not only by the single report. For instance, we have reports of so many parasites and other pathogens that might infect humans, might infect domestic animals, but sometimes those studies are not so well explored, not go further to really know which are the role of the opossums in the transmission cycle of those parasites. We have important studies, for instance, with the Chagas disease agent, the Panosoma cruzi, in which it's known that opossums are important reservoirs and that they might be involved, they are involved in the transmission cycle in nature, in the for other animals with the presence of the vector, and might be an important species also in the transmission for humans through the oral infection, as I told before. Other zoonotic parasites such as Ancylostoma, as I also give the example of Ancylostoma caninum, that causes the larva migrans cutanean in humans. It has been detected with a high prevalence in opossums. And we know that opossums are really present. They are present in our day by day in America. We can see them at night exploring the rubbish, searching for food. And when their feces there might be contaminated, might contaminate the environment, and these parasites that are in that contaminated environment might pass to humans, to dogs, directly to humans, or if pass to dogs, dogs might be the source of infection. But in somehow, opossums might be directly or indirectly involved in the transmission cycle of those parasites. But as I told, it's important to do more research because we have so many reports of zoonotic pathogens infecting opossums, but then we have to combine it with the studies on the real role of these animals on the transmission cycle. And of course, I would like also to say that we know that opossums are important as an ecological player in the environment. So it's important to maintain those animals in their natural environment, to maintain the forested areas, so to try to avoid this human contact with those Didelphis species.
Okay. Yeah. One health is the way that we are convinced that we must to walk in this way. But also it's a very complex to do it. It's not easy to do it.
Yeah, I know.
So, what is your opinion about the success of any investigation that wants to work on this way in One Health? There is a possibility to success. It's very difficult to do it. What we must to do to break all the difficulties of the obstacles to
Yes, I completely understand. Yeah, it's something that it takes time to do. It's really, as you told, it's difficult to do this research on these animals. In fact, usually I would say it's important the collaboration among the diverse research group. For instance, in Brazil, I would say the example, we have examples of recovery centers where they have these animals, they take these animals from the city. If they are animals that were attacked by dogs or of road accidents, they bring them for recovery. So we or continue those studies, we might take samples from those animals to try to check for those pathogens to have a more clear picture of the pathogens that occur in these animals and if those pathogens are really zoonotic. So I mean, I'd say it's quite difficult to continue the research. It's like a work that has been done like by small steps, but it's a topic that we should give attention because we know that such as the Delphis are a really important species that is present in America. It's quite present in many areas of America. We have a high diversity of pathogens that circulate among the forest areas, the urban areas. So it's important to give attention to those animals that are circulating also among the urban and the rural areas. So it's difficult, but it's something that we should give attention on the topic to monitor those pathogens.
We hope in this conference to make the basis, to make the first step to establish a collaboration and to do a project or some other areas to go in this way. And surely we will to contact you again to join us in this purpose.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Marcos.
Thank you. And thank you again for the invite for to give this talk. It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Hello, Marcos. I'm sorry. I have a question, please. Apparently, we have some people here in Mexico having these animals as pets. Your presentation has many examples about the zoonotic cycle transmission, but do you have any evidence about the transmission, like domestic transmission from this animal as pets?
Yes, this is a good question because I didn't put in the presentation, but in the review that we wrote, we talk about this because they are exotic pets also in some areas of America. There is no record of the transmission of pathogens among these exotic pet animals, but there are some studies. For instance, there are some recent published studies on the risk of the transmission of zoonotic diseases among pets, exotic pet animals, not only opossums, but also other animals such as hedgehogs and other reptiles, that this risk exists. And with all the examples that I gave, that these opossums might get diseases from dogs, that is common in dogs such as the Ancylostoma caninum, they are good reservoirs, really reservoirs that might not develop the disease, for instance, the rickettsiosis, the leishmania, the trypanosoma cruzi. So there are these risks for those people because they have them as pets animals. If those animals are not monitored for the occurrence of the pathogens, it might be a risk, and with the presence of vectors or through the secretion of these animals might be this risk of transmission to people. However, this is a good point in which also lacks studies on this part of the occurrence of zoonotic pathogens on pets, on exotic pets such as the Delphis species.
Thank you so much, Doctor.
Thank you.
Hello. Dr. Marcos, this is Antonio Bezerra from the Autonomous University of Yucatan. Regarding the presence of Trypanosoma cruzi in the adult plants, how frequently you see these cases, and what is the risk to people that adopt opossums as pets?
Yes, it is quite frequently. There are studies where they found a high prevalence of Trypanosoma cruzi in the anal glands of opossums, and this is considered one of the most important forms of transmission of opossums because in that anal glands it was proved that is the effective stage of the parasite. So the parasites that if they are ingested by a human, the human probably will get the infection because it's the infective stage. So the secretion that are present in those anal glands might contaminate the environment, might contaminate food, water, and if people consume this contaminated food or water, or even directly consume the accidentally the secretion from the anal gland of these animals, might be at risk of acquiring the Chagas disease. Thank you.
I wanted to ask about your perception on the relocation of opossums that are on urban areas. That we know that they are at risk in urban areas sometimes because of cars, and sometimes people relocate them to natural areas or areas that may have a different dynamic in pathogens. And I wanted to know, what is your perception on this? If the urban areas have different dynamic of pathogens and natural areas have different dynamics, how can it affect that we relocate an opossum from urban areas to make a system that is farther apart or is maybe has a different dynamic, or if you know that it has a different dynamic, or if there are similar?
Uh-huh. Okay, thank you for the question. So I would say in a perfect word, I would say that before relocating those animals must taken to a place to be tested for the parasites, the pathogens that are really important. Uh, but sometimes it's not possible. So usually I know from my experience from Brazil that there are the environmental police, people that work directly with those animals. They are brought to a recovery center and there they might be tested for pathogens before being released into the environment. However, I say that usually opossums circulate in an area, for instance, close, they are in the city and they are close to circulate among forested areas that are close to that city. So the process of relocation would be in that close environment. And this is something that I know it's difficult. Opossums really commonly they are found in the roof of the houses, living close to the houses. Sometimes they make their habitat the human dwellings, the houses of people, the farms where there are some places there where they keep food from the animals. And usually what happens is that people would kill those animals instead of calling some professionals to relocate them to a proper place. So I would say that there is always the risk, but it's more risky to have these animals in the cities than relocating them to their natural habitat, which are the forested places.
Hi, Doctor. I'm Jesus. I just want to talk about soft tips. Do you think that in the process the role of hard tips as vectors is greater than the soft tips? Because I say this because in your document only one space for soft tips is mentioned.
So if I understand well, you talk about soft sticks, right?
Right. In your document,
Okay.
you just mentioned one species of soft tips.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes, in my experience, I read like very old studies where they found soft sticks in opossums. Is something also to be investigated since I don't know if you are aware, but many soft tick species in South America has been recently considered vectors of important Rickettsia species. So they might, and they are also present in opossums, mainly opossums that are in forests. The problem with soft ticks is that they feed on the animal, and does not attach on the animal. So they usually are fast feeders. So that's why it's quite difficult to find these soft feeds directly on the opossums. But it's also a parasite that feeds on opossums and might be involved in the transmission of pathogens. However, I mean, studies are needed. There is no um, for the study important studies in which was analyzed the association of pathogens, soft ticks, and opossums. It is also ideas that should be discussed, and the studies that might go well should be explored.
Sorry, we have time for only one question, please.
Hola, doctor. Bueno, yo tengo mucho contacto con tlacuaches de la zona urbana. Sí, me va a traducir. Tengo mucho contacto con tlacuaches de zona urbana, a los cuales yo ayudo. Yo soy ciudadana, no estudié biología ni veterinario, pero pues tengo apoyo de especialistas como ustedes que me han ayudado en tiendas, cuidados y todo. Entonces, el tema de leptospirosis, ¿qué tan frecuente es en los tlacuaches y qué tanta precaución debo yo de tener al manipular los recipientes en los que yo alimento? Porque pues obviamente no tengo las posibilidades de hacer exámenes químicos sanguíneos a cada tlacuache que me llegan, a la pudiera, ¿verdad? Pero normalmente pues alude como para la bandeja de agua, bueno, para su dieta y pues ya. Entonces, ¿qué recomendaciones me podría usted dar para si es que son como los roedores que si pueden ellos contaminarse tan fácil como los perros y no sé si me entienden?
So, if you
So, okay, so here Yvette, she rescues opossums and she has dealt with leptospirosis. Yeah, and she's wondering how she could handle the more caring materials that are infected, and also what to do with the rodents that might have access to the infection, and how frequent it is for opossums to transmit it to other animals or humans.
So yeah, I think I understood in general about leptospirosis. As I told there, today I talked about parasites. I'm not aware of studies on leptospirosis on opossums. It might be out there, such as also other studies with other pathogens such as virus or other species of bacteria. In general, as recommendation, I would always say to people that work directly with those animals to manipulate them of the correct form, to use the people that should be trained to manipulate them, avoid contact with the secretion of opossums, um, uh, not to people wear glasses, wear protective equipment if you have to have this direct contact with opossums, and if you have to work directly with them. So usually people work with them, have to manipulate them. Uh, I worked about 1 year with opossums. I know about all the risks that I was exposed to. I did my training, but I mean, all that they might be reservoirs of viruses such as rabies or leptospirosis. So I try to avoid the contact with those secretions and always to wear protective equipment. And the people also that were working with me, they were aware of those risks, and they were trained to work to manipulate these animals in the proper way. So I would say to have contact with those animals only if you really are working with research, if you need to do research, or other people, professionals that work with wildlife that are directly working on the conservation or in the reintroduction of those animals in their natural habitats. I don't know if I answered your question. I hope yes, doctor.
Thank you very much, Dr. Marcos.
No, thank you.